Yeah.
imagine surgical training, but moving beyond that traditional see one, do one, teach one approach, the one with all its inherent challenges, patient safety worries, high OR costs, maybe not enough exposure to the really tricky cases. What if you could get that critical surgical experience, practice it again and again, without ever stepping into a real operating room? That's exactly what we're doing a deep dive into today. We're looking at the cutting-edge world of surgical video games, virtual simulators, and really how they're fundamentally changing surgical education. Our mission here is to unpack how these tools, these innovative tools, are basically turning dense textbook knowledge into, well, practical, lived virtual experiences. Think about it. Making the invaluable experience of expert surgeons the authors of those textbooks, even available for trainees to replicate, to really master. We're pulling from some fascinating scholarly articles, research papers, looking at simulation tech, gamification, how they build these incredibly accurate digital models. Okay, so let's unpack the old way first. Traditional surgical training, the apprenticeship model. It had some pretty significant hurdles, right?
Oh, absolutely. You had trainees getting wildly different experiences, sometimes limited hands-on practice. And frankly, the patient safety issue was always there, learning on actual patients.
Right. And then you add the economic pressures, or time isn't cheap.
Exactly. Plus, new complex stuff like laparoscopy coming in and this big push everywhere to reduce errors. It just became really clear that, well, something had to change. A paradigm shift was needed.
And that's where simulation comes in as this really compelling solution.
Yeah, it offers this reusable template for learning. You can do it anytime. It's less stressful. And, crucially, no risk to patients. And the simulators themselves, the fidelity, it's constantly getting better.
Yeah.
Especially for minimally invasive procedures.
But it's not just about the fancy tech, is it? That's a key point from the research.
Precisely. It's easy to get wowed by the technology, the graphics, the haptics, but what the sources really emphasize is that the simulator, however advanced, it's just a tool, like a scalpel. The real driver of skill development, that's the curriculum, the structure around the tool. That's what truly shapes the surgeon.
That's a really important distinction. So thinking about that curriculum, how do we actually bridge that gap? From the textbook theory to the hands-on doing, our sources mention Paul Fitt's stages of skill learning. Seems like a perfect fit here.
It really is. Fitz breaks it down into 3 stages, which map beautifully onto this process.
Okay, so first stage, cognitive.
Right, the thinking part.
This is where you intellectualize it. Reading the books, watching videos, understanding the steps, the mechanics. One source actually estimates surgery is something like 75% cognitive skill, which is huge.
It is. And this is where your textbooks, your video libraries, all those databases come in. They're packed with this cognitive content.
And making sure that content is valid is crucial, right? Like the expert panels for the FLS program.
Exactly. Content validity ensures the information is relevant, balanced, that it truly reflects what master surgeons know and do. It's the foundation.
Okay, then stage 2, associative. This is where it gets really practical, I think.
Mm-hmm. This is where you start translating that thinking into doing, practicing the actual movements, connecting what you see, the cues, to the right actions. Simple models often start here, but then...
The simulators become key.
Yeah, computer-based simulators are really attractive here because they offer this reliable, repeatable training ground. And they can use tech like AR, VR to give feedback, which allows for this concept called fading.
Fading.
Yeah, where the simulator gradually reduces the prompts, the help. So the trainee starts relying less on external cues and more on their internal feel, their proprioception, that sense of where your hands are, the pressure you're applying. It starts becoming intuitive.
Almost like the simulator is embedding that expert intuition.
In a way, yes. It's guiding them towards that internalized skill.
Which leads to the final stage, autonomous.
The ultimate goal, where the movements, the psychomotor skills are just integrated, automatic. You're not consciously thinking, okay, left hand does this, right hand does that. You're just doing it.
Right.
Like driving a car,
Right. It becomes second nature.
Exactly. And continued structured practice, often without an instructor right there, helps get you to that stage. Complex actions become smooth, efficient.
So this whole process, this framework, it effectively takes that old see one, do one, teach one, and makes it much more structured, measurable.
And safer. It replicates it, but enhances it through a criterion-based curriculum. You only move on when you've actually mastered a step.
Which ensures that textbook knowledge really does become ingrained practical skill. Okay, so let's get into the tech itself. How do these surgical video games actually build that virtual experience? Starts with the anatomy, I gather.
Absolutely. And the way they do it now is fascinating. They're using advanced deep learning AI frameworks things like NNUNet, running inside common software like 3D Slicer, to automatically pull out super precise 3D shapes of organs, like over 100 of them, directly from real CT scans.
Wow, so not just generic models.
No, based on real data.
Mm-hmm.
Then they import this into 3D graphics software like Blender. And medical experts can actually go in and manually refine the edges, make sure it's spot-on accurate, way beyond a flat textbook diagram.
They can even add things.
Yeah, add blood vessels or other structures that maybe the automated process missed.
And you mentioned this is all built on open source software.
That's a key point. This whole pipeline, from scan to interactive 3D model, it's open source, which is huge for accessibility, for innovation. It's not locked down. It helps democratize this kind of advanced training.
That really speaks to our mission, doesn't it? Taking that static textbook knowledge and making it explorable, tangible. You're basically inside the anatomy.
Exactly. But seeing isn't everything. To make it truly practical, you need the feel, haptics, realistic tactile feedback. Devices like the Phantom Arm, these force feedback joysticks, they let trainees feel the resistance of tissue, the texture. That's critical for fine motor control, for learning those subtle feelings an expert relies on.
Okay, so we have the anatomy, the feel. What about just the visuals? You mentioned 3D videos earlier.
Right, the visual side is interesting. Sources show that overall, 3D videos aren't necessarily better than 2D for everyone.
Oh.
Yeah, but for residents with high visual spatial abilities, people who are good at mentally rotating objects, for them, 3D significantly boosts learning. But for those with lower visual spatial skills, the extra complexity, the cognitive load might actually make it harder. It could hinder learning.
So it's not a simple 3D is always better situation.
Not so at all. Which raises the question, how do we optimize these virtual experiences for all learners? It's not just about flashy visuals. Maybe it's using real tool handles, adding realistic sound, improving the 3D vision, and crucially, making sure what you see perfectly matches what you feel through the haptics. That synchronization is key.
Getting that feeling of presence right.
Exactly. The sources call it the psychological domain of fidelity. How much it feels real. That's apparently the hardest part to nail, but maybe the most important for transferring skills.
And these aren't just simulators. We called them surgical video games. So gamification plays a role too. How does that help learn?
It does. Gamification is essentially adding game elements, scores, levels, time limits, achievements to the learning task. The goal is engagement, motivation, making practice less of a chore, maybe more, fun or at least compelling, providing clear goals, immediate feedback.
And this connects to flow theory, right? Keeping learners in that sweet spot.
Precisely. Flow theory suggests that for optimal learning, you need this balance. The challenge of the task needs to match the learner's skill level.
Too easy, you get bored.
Too hard, you get anxious, frustrated. Neither is good for learning.
You want them in that flow channel, fully immersed, optimally challenged, really absorbing the skill.
Exactly. Yeah. And interestingly, one study found that just making a high-fidelity simulation more complex didn't automatically make novices better. If the difficulty wasn't right for their level, they weren't in flow.
Which suggests we need smarter simulators.
Potentially, yeah. This idea of flow AI comes up.
Wow.
Imagine a simulator that could track your performance in real time and dynamically adjust the difficulty, maybe adding complications, maybe simplifying slightly to keep you in that optimal learning zone.
Wow. Adaptive learning for surgery. What are the hurdles to actually making that happen, though? Seems complex.
It is complex. You need really sophisticated tracking, smart algorithms to figure out the learner's state. Are they getting overloaded? Are they bored? And then adjusting the scenario smoothly without breaking the immersion. It's a big challenge.
And tied into all this is validation, right? Making sure these serious games actually work.
Absolutely critical. Before you integrate these into a curriculum, they need rigorous testing. Content validity, does it teach the right stuff? Face validity, does it feel real to surgeons? Construct validity, does it differentiate skill levels? And crucially, predictive validity, do skills learned in the game actually transfer to better performance in the real OR? That's the ultimate test.
So assuming they pass validation, what are the tangible benefits for trainees, for the system? How does this bake in that expert experience?
The benefits are significant. Enhanced technical skill, definitely. Fewer errors, better overall performance. Because trainees get this safe space to practice decision-making, critical thinking, not just the mechanics. Studies back this up. VR-trained surgeons making fewer errors, working faster in procedures like gallbladder removal.
Well, laparoscopic cholecystectomies, yeah.
Right. And team simulations improve communication, too. It really allows that expert knowledge, the best practices, to be experienced and mastered repeatedly.
Okay, but what about the cost? Is this tech just for the Harvards and Stanfords, or can it scale?
That's a fair question. The initial development cost can be high. That ulnar fracture simulator example, about $85,000. That's not trivial.
No.
But you look long-term, say 10, 15 years, compared to traditional physical models like sawbones,
Where?
where you're constantly replacing materials, tools, the simulators can actually become more cost-effective.
Because the virtual resources are reusable.
Exactly. So while it's an upfront investment, the long-term value proposition in terms of cost, safety, and quality of training is strong.
So the ultimate goal here isn't just for these simulators to be an add-on.
Ideally, no. The goal is full integration into the surgical curriculum, mandatory participation potentially, to ensure everyone benefits, moving beyond just an adjunct.
Because the evidence shows it works.
The evidence is strong and growing, yes. Simulation-based training demonstrably transfers skills to the operating room. High-fidelity practice leads to better real-world performance. It bridges that gap from expert knowledge to trainee competence very effectively.
So wrapping this deep dive up, it seems clear these surgical video games aren't just some sci-fi concept. They're real, powerful tools, fundamentally changing how we train surgeons. They really do bridge that gap from textbook page to practical skill, creating these accurate virtual bodies, adding realistic touch, using games to keep people learning optimally.
And the ability to practice complex things over and over safely, guided by curricula that essentially embed master surgeon experience. The benefits are huge. Better skills, fewer errors, maybe even long-term cost savings. The future of surgical training looks very immersive, very interactive.
It really makes that expert knowledge accessible and repeatable. So thinking about that, what does this mean for you, the learner? Given these advancements, this push for personalized, safe training, how might future simulations go beyond just replicating expert experience? Could they actually start to anticipate and adapt to your specific learning style, your unique strengths and weaknesses, creating a truly personalized path to surgical mastery? Something to think about.